A very good morning to you from the Shanghai International Circuit for another race in the Lamborghini Super Trofeo Asia 2024 Championship. And as you can see, the sun is out for now. And just a little word, if you were tuning into yesterday's coverage and I told you to be back at 2 p.m. local time, well, things changed shortly after the race, and that is because we have Typhoon Babinka barreling down, looking to make landfall pretty close to Shanghai by the looks of things in the early hours of tomorrow morning. So all the race action today has been shifted up as early as possible. So apologies if you're tuning in and catching a replay on the live stream on YouTube or other platforms. That is why. I didn't lie to you. Apologies if you set your alarm clock from wherever you are in the world and you're not quite watching this live, maybe 3 hours delay. It has been moved up 3 hours because of that typhoon. Now we have some very, very close races within the Lamborghini Super Trofeo Asia Championships. In the Pro class, it's a 5-point gap at the top with Dan Wells, who leads with 99 points, and he leads from Charles Leong and Miki Kiyama on 94. Now Dan had been racing previous to Shanghai with teammate Emilian Cardet, Frenchman, who was unable to make it to Shanghai. So he's technically in third place on 86 points, tied with the duo of Gavin Huang and Jonathan Chicotto, who, barring a DNF, will at the very least overtake Cardet. But they will have their sights set on something higher up the championship in the Pro class, with just 2 more races after this in Jerez in Spain in about a month's time, in the middle of November. So they are 86 points, fresh off a win yesterday. As you see, the number 65 car of Dan Wells, who is currently our championship leader, and he will very much hope to be there, defending his 5-point gap at the top of the Pro class by the end of the race. In the Pro-Am class, it's even tighter at the top, a 3-point gap with Thomas Yuli and Nicholas Pertilati, and they were hauled in a little bit by their rivals in the championship. They are on 106 points, just 3 points ahead of Chen Fanping and Andre Couto, who took second yesterday. They're on 103. And then don't discount Salim Rafiq and Jasmine Jafar, who missed the Sepang round at the start of the season, so they are playing catch-up. But they won yesterday after an absolutely stunning performance from the duo. Started on 17th on the grid and ended up second overall. And second is where Jasmine Jafar will start on this grid today. We have 2 other classes to keep you up to date with throughout the proceedings today. The Am class, and you can I'll just pause there. You can see the storm clouds beginning to roll and the wind just picking up. It should be fine for this race, which will be just about under an hour long. But later today, things could get pretty messy. So that's, as I mentioned before, why we have an earlier start time than planned. In the Am class, we have Brian Lee, who's had a brilliant season, and he's had 6 wins so far to put him on 120 points. But despite that, he did have a DNF, which meant that Cat and Pooh, the tie duo, were only 8 points behind him. Just take a look at this famous Shanghai International Circuit. Just a little bit under 5.5 kilometers in length. That very long home straight between 13 and 14, and that tight opening section from the start into 1, 2, 3, 4 there at the top of the screen. It's another Herman Tilke designed circuit, designed in the Chinese character for Shang. So, the Shang of Shanghai, that is. And yes, we can see the wind clearly picking up. Let's hope that doesn't impact proceedings too much. So we will get our formation lap underway shortly. Let me just quickly tell you about the Lamborghini Cup. So in the Am class, we had an 8-point gap from Brian Lee, who was second in the Am class last year, trying to make it first, and the pair who were second in the Lamborghini Cup have a pretty commanding lead. That's the O brothers from Malaysia. They lead with 138 points from Superchai, who is on 111. So let's run you through the grid for today. Well, the story of the second qualifying was not Jasmine Jafar, who's on second in the grid after his stunning performance yesterday, but Li Shenyu, who is going to be our pole sitter today. He's an amateur, he's a bronze rank driver, but you can be sure he's at the very top of that bronze class. He didn't actually get in the car at all yesterday because his teammate Xie Wenjun, you can see them at the top in the number 95 car. They had a retirement before Li was able to get in the car, but Li set an absolutely blistering time of 2:04.612 in second qualifying to put him in pole, despite being in the amateur class. And you can see those green amateurs there. Amateurs qualifying in first, fifth and sixth overall. So putting some of their pro-rated competitors slightly to shame. Second row of the grid, we've got Dan Wells with Charles Leong. Then on the third row, we have Pu from Thailand and Brian Lee. Two more amateurs on the third row. Peter Lee from Blackjack Racing, a Chinese driver, goes in 7th position, 4th in class in the pro class. And then Gavin Huang, who teamed up for victory with Jonathan Chicotto overall yesterday. They start from position number 8. Smart Set, who finished very, very impressive second, he starts down in 9th today, ahead of Chen Fanping. We'll be handing over later to Andre Kuto. Then we have Sutilak Buncharan from Thailand, who starts on the 6th row of the grid alongside Haziq O. Stephen Hong and his teammate Harry He. Harry will be starting for the Madness Racing team in position number 13 alongside Johnson Huang, who goes for the Arrow Racing team, the number 51 car, in 14th position. 20 cars in all today. 15th position is Thomas Yu Lee. They finished in 12th yesterday with his teammate, the young Finnish racer Nicholas Pertilati. He's just 20 years old. Then we have Supachai Wiraborn Wonpong from Thailand in 16th position, and the back two rows of the grid is Song Jia Jun alongside Dr. Ma in the Arrows Racing car, and then Samson Chan, also in Arrows Racing, goes from 19th position alongside Bertram Lau, who will be handing over to Kenneth Lau in the number 68 car. So, the black car behind the safety car there, just on the right, just beginning to do a little bit of some weaving there to warm up the tyres. That is Li Shenyu, who set the quickest lap in qualifying 2 yesterday morning, but he will be under immense pressure from the vastly experienced Jasmine Jafar at the start of this race, which is now just moments away, and you can feel the excitement building. Certainly I can. Jasmine Jafar has pretty much done it all when it comes to this field. He's raced at Le Mans, Formula One development driver back in the day, and the World Endurance Championship. Not a whole lot of experience in comparison for Li Shenyu. Alongside him in pole position today in the black car, and he'll be doing everything he can to hold that lead into turn 1 against Jafar, who just absolutely roared up the grid for about 15th or 16th position when he took over from Rafiq yesterday, and finished in 2nd overall, first in class in the Pro-Am. So the lights have gone green and we are racing here, and what can Li Shenyu do? Well, Dan Wells is trying to come down on the left of picture in the blue car, but Li brilliantly holds position. Jasmine Jafar in 2nd, and Dan Wells will maintain 3rd, and he looks to try to go through Jafar, in fact, and they are neck and neck, and Wells does make it through up into 2nd early on here. Oh, and Lee, a little bit of a braking mistake. Wells again takes the position, so 3rd to 1st for the Hong Kong-based driver, Dan Wells. Well, that is a brilliant start from him, and Jasmine Jafar now all over the back of Li Shenyu, trying to look for 2nd position early on. Well, what a blistering start we've had here in Shanghai. And it is going to be 50 minutes of racing. Remember, there is a pit stop window 20 minutes into this race, so all the cars where they're driving solo, as Dan Wells is today. There he is, the early race leader, and oh, disaster now for Li Shenyu. Can you believe it? Well, what a weekend he's had. An absolutely blistering qualifying time, a 2:04. Let's hope that he can get back onto the track. Oh, just heartbreak for Li Shenyu. So quick over the 1 lap in qualifying. didn't get in the car yesterday because his teammate retired, had a great start to hold off Jasmine Jafar into the early turns and then lost position with Dan Wells coming through, and then the spin. Let's see if we can see a replay of that in a moment's time. But Li Shenyu at the back of the field, so a roller coaster for him as Dan Wells now tries to just settle down at the front of this field. But he has Jasmine Jafar, who was absolutely roaring yesterday in the second half of the race. He will be trying to give his teammate Salim Rafiq every advantage that he can. We see some battles in midfield just behind the leading pack here. So just over 2 minutes gone, and it's all happening here in Shanghai. The number 2 car there with the green and black of Brian Lee, and he did very, very well yesterday and takes another position, going past the 78 there of Bobby, who's had a pretty good start himself. So to look at Buncharan, and he's going to look to try to keep inside, but no. Brian Lee closes the door, looking for his 7th win of this championship in the amateur class. But despite all those wins, still only an 8-point lead ahead of the Thai duo of Captain Poo in that amateur class. So plenty going on in the championship there. Now the 88 is Jason Chen Fan Ping, and he will be trying to do everything he can to try to stay in that top 10, currently in 10th position. That's where he started, as he hands over to his pro teammate Andre Couto, who drove very well yesterday and was up amongst the leaders. So if Couto can get the car in a competitive position, he can challenge for the overall lead. At least that is the hope. Dan Wells, qualifying in 3rd, finished 7th overall yesterday in the race, 3rd in the pro class, now leads. And Dan Wells has raced here in Shanghai countless occasions, so he knows every inch of this pretty wide track compared to some of the others, so plenty of opportunities for overtaking, and we've seen some of that already, haven't we? As we see the remainder of the field, and let's see if Li Shenyu is still with us. Well, he's certainly not in touch with the back markers there. So anyway, the 28 car, that is Smart Se from Hong Kong. And he had a brilliant drive yesterday, started in 3rd, finished in 2nd, but currently in 9th position at the moment. So he'll hope to just ease himself into this race. Solo driver, so he'll be coming in for a pit stop, staying in the car, and then back out for his 2nd stint. And let's see what he can do here. So plenty of battles all over this track. And let's see if... Well, Li Shenyu has rejoined at the back, so that is good news at least. He's up into 19th position, so it's just skirted past Bertram Lau, but not at all where he wanted to be. Well, that was the thing to watch at the start. I thought he did initially do everything he had to do to hold off Jasmine Jafar into turn 1, but it wasn't long before Dan Wells, and now another spin. Just trying to make out who that is in the smoke. Another retirement, and that's possibly going to bring out a safety fire at the back as well. So drama in the opening 5 minutes of this race in Shanghai, as the 65 car of Dan Wells is coming under fierce attack now from Jasmine Jafar, as we anticipated might be the case. Jafar having a look here, can he go past his rival and into the overall lead for the first time this weekend? He's going to make it stick. He's got the inside line, and that was a pretty textbook move there. Dan Wells just seeing if there's a way back, not for now at least. So yet another lead change at the head of this field. Unfortunately, no signs yet of a yellow flag, so perhaps that car was cleared. Try and bring you some more information on that just as soon as we get it. So we are about 13 minutes away from the pit window opening. The number 2 car there of Peter Lee, trying to go past Brian Lee, and he has done it. Lee Jasong, Chinese driver, with a nice move there inside his Korean rival. Brian Lee still leads in the amateur class, and if he can hold into that class position, that would be the 7th win in 10 races in the amateur class, the 63 car. Now, following this one here on screen, green and black of Lee Jasong, also known as Peter. This is Brian Lee. You can see the Korean flag there in the back window. As we go back to our race leaders, and Dan Wells is hanging on to the coattails of Jasmine Jafar. He will not want to let him get away here, but he won't be too worried, because he knows that if he can keep it close in the first half of this race, then he should have a decent chance of overhauling Salim Rafiq when he takes over from Jafar. And what I imagine we'll see is Jasmine Jafar staying out for absolutely as long as he can when this pit window opens. So he takes just about 30 minutes of the race and gives Rafiq about 20. You never quite know what the team's strategy is. There might be other considerations. The 32 car of Charles Leong up into 3rd from 4th where they started. Of course, that early spin for Li Shenyu, bumping everyone up the order. 22-year-old driver from Macau is Charles Leong. He'll be handing over to the 26-year-old female driver from Japan, Miki Kiyama. Both of them pretty impressive in race 9 yesterday. So the timing on the left of your screen, that just updates at the end of each lap. So just be aware if something looks not quite right. The 51 car there of Johnson Huang battling with the number 5 car, and that is Hazik O. He'll be handing over to his brother Harry in about 10 or 15 minutes time. But this man, Jasmine Jafar, didn't quite get the start that he hoped for, but it didn't matter because he's now in the lead. And he has been putting in some 2:04s, the best lap time of this race so far. Dan Wells behind him, his best is a 2:05.9, so that shows you just about a second difference in their best times between these front two, but Wells doing well to hang on. And keep an eye also on the number 11 car. Well, it's just lost a place here, has Gavin Huang to Peter Lee, but Huang and Chikoto in the 11 car were the race winners from yesterday. So Chikoto and Huang having another look. He's not going to do it here. I want to go around the outside, but he will be looking for an opportunity to retake position number 4 from Peter Lee. Look at this. Huang is trying to line him up, and can he make it into turn 1? And this tight little section, 1, 2, 3, 4, the turns after that long home straight. Well, this could be a battle that runs for the next 10 minutes or so until the pit window opens. Then I imagine Gavin Huang will be peeling off earlier rather than later to hand over to his German teammate Jonathan Chikoto. Now Lee Well, let's see how he's doing. He does have to come in, but he's a solo driver, so he's not handing over. It'll just be about management of the tyres, how he's feeling. And tyres do get a bit of a beating around this track, so that is another thing the drivers need to worry about. They only have a limited number of tyres for the qualifying and the races. There is an extra set if they need, if the race is declared wet. But as you can see, it is dry for now, even though we know that rain is coming later in the day, hence the early start. Well, bad news, it appears, for the number 95 car. And this was the man in pole position, but Li Shenyu has not had a very happy weekend here in Shanghai, apart from an incredibly bright spot, which was that second qualifying session. He set the fastest lap time of all, faster than several of the pro drivers. So Jasmine Jafar in the number 8 Arrows Racing is just beginning to ease away from Dan Wells in second. And I mentioned all those pro drivers, so amateur drivers, sorry, qualifying in 1st, 5th and 6th. Well, Brian Lee, who is in 6th position, he is the only amateur driver still to be in the top 6. So they were quick around one lap, but the pro teams have done their best to restore order. You can see the red coloured numbers on the timing graphic. Those are all the pro teams, so 2, 3, 4, 5 and 7 with pro driver Jasmine Jafar currently leading, and he is the man on your screen, but he'll be handing over to his amateur teammate Salim Rafiq later on, so it would be a bit of an upset if the number 8 car takes the overall win here in Shanghai. They will be mostly focused on taking the honours in the Pro-Am class, where things are extremely tight, as I was explaining earlier, with a 3-point gap between 2 other teams. That's Thomas Yuli and Nicholas Pertilati 106, leading the championship in the Pro-Am class from Chen Fanping and Andre Couto. So look for Couto in the second half of this race to battle with Nicholas Pertilati, perhaps even overhaul Salim Rafiq. Let's see what that does, but if Jasmine Jafar can give Rafiq enough of a lead, he could hold on for the class win and then try to get back into this championship fight. They are currently 23 points off the championship lead, having not raced in Sepang. So it's a tall order for Rafiq and Jafar to try and overhaul the championship lead in the Pro-Am class, but not impossible, particularly if there is a DNF for one of the other teams. So the drivers who are preparing to get into their cars, just taking on some fluids. Always hot and humid in Shanghai. Cooler, of course, in September than it has been in July and August. With the storm clouds gathering just off the eastern seaboard, it will be extremely muggy and hot inside these cars. Number 77 of Harry He, who'll be handing over to Stephen Hong, and they finished 10th overall yesterday, currently running in 11th place overall, 3rd in the amateur class. So it wasn't too long ago that we saw sun on the track, so a very smart decision, it would appear, by the stewards and officials to bump up this race 3 hours earlier. Again, if you're just joining and you're expecting to be seeing live coverage and you're watching a replay, Typhoon Babinka is fast approaching in Shanghai, and it shouldn't hit this race, but it will probably impact most of the afternoon and into the evening, as the centre of it looks to be making landfall in the early hours of tomorrow morning. So that is why we have 3-hour starts, slightly quicker turnaround. Yesterday's race was 4 in the afternoon, so a little bit less rest and preparation time. Chance to review the data and the videos for these drivers. They won't mind as long as they get a good race in here. So Dan Wells in second on screen there, coming under pressure from Charles Leong of Macau. And Charles has had a pretty solid race weekend, and he's now looking to make it even better. And this is also the battle for the overall Pro Class Championship. Dan Wells is on 99 points, and Leong and Kiyama, his teammate, just 5 points behind. So what happens here is critical in this championship race. Charles really needs to try and get past Wells here, see if he can hand over to Miki Kiyama in the lead, and then it's down to her to see if she can hold off the man from Hong Kong. But first they've got to get past him, otherwise Wells will be extending his slender lead at the top of the championship table. Now this is a very good battle. You can see Leong, a bit of gamesmanship, a little flash of the lights here and there. Come on, move aside. Pretty sure Dan's not going to do that. But drivers do that sometimes to anything they can to distract their rivals. And Leong absolutely right behind him. He's got to be lining something up now. What is going to happen here? As the tyres are ready for the change. Well, it's interesting because let's see what happens in these pit stops. But the pit stop is a 60-second pit stop. It's not as quick as you can. But any work on the car needs to be done after that 60-second window, as Charles Leong does go past Dan Wells into second overall, just as we get another lap in the books. And in less than a minute's time, the pit window will open, and Charles Leong, I think, will stay out for at least a couple more laps, you would imagine, because he is roaring now. See what he's been doing. He's been going around in a 2:05.2, his best. 2:05.4 is the best from Dan Wells, but that last lap, he beat Wells by almost a second. So Charles Leong is roaring. Dan Wells perhaps will just be playing this a little bit safe, because he knows he's got better chances perhaps against Miki Kiyama, who wasn't quite as fast as Charles yesterday. But Charles Leong is absolutely roaring around here. Not yet the fastest driver. That's still Jasmine Jafar, the race leader. 2:04.711 he just put in, the best lap of the morning so far. And the pit now is open. So let's see when Dan Wells decides to come in. Might be a little bit of strategy. He might want to stay with Leong and shadow him to see where his championship rival goes, or he might just want to leave him out there on his own and come in early. Could be an interesting little decision. So Jasmine Jafar has already lapped one of the back markers. That's the 68 car of Bertram Lau. He'll be handing over to Kenneth. So he's made up a fair bit of time on the field already, with just 21 minutes gone. So a back marker between first and second on screen, and the blue car of Dan Wells in third. Charles Leong. So here we go. Well, this is, as expected, Gavin Huang in 6th overall, the number 11 car, and race winner yesterday, coming in at the first opportunity to hand over to Jonathan Cecotto. See if Cecotto can climb up the leaderboard. This, another expected move. Jason Chen will be handing over to Andre Couto. They are currently in 8th overall. The leaderboard is going to be a bit of a mess over the next few minutes because some will have pitted and others will have not. And so we'll need about 10 minutes or so just to figure out what is what. So we see the 71 of Super Chai battling with Samson Chan, the 68, and another couple of cars come into the pits. So they have to be in the pits for a minimum of 60 seconds. And we saw a couple of penalties post-race yesterday for slightly too short pit windows. What happens is whenever time you go early, that's tripled as a penalty. So it didn't turn out to be a whole lot for the two cars that were affected. Stephen Hong and Harry Hurt in 77 were one of those. They had a penalty of 2.4 seconds, so they must have gone just a little bit under 1 second early. We'll be trying not to make that mistake again, as we saw the 71 of Super Chai. So this is Jonathan Cecotto, his teammate first into the pit, so he is first out. And then that, I think, is Andre Couto. So the 77, Harry Hurt handing over to Stephen Hong. And they will get back underway. So you can see the countdown. Won't want to go too early, and off he goes. The 71 of Super Chai solo driver, so he has stayed in the car. Of course, the two things you don't want to do is go too early. You have to be in the pits for 60 seconds, and you don't want to be speeding in the pit lane either, because that likely incurs a drive-through penalty, which costs you all sorts of time. The 63 there of Brian Lee, just making full use of the track here, and a little bit over it as well. It seems to be okay. So Jasmine Jafar and Charles Leong, we haven't seen them, but with Dan Wells and Peter Lee, they are still out. So this is Jasmine Jafar still out, and he is passing another of the back markers and doing it pretty quickly too. So Jasmine Jafar, the most experienced driver in this field, is going to see how many laps he can push it before he has to come in and hand over to Salim Rafiq. Behind him, in that pretty orange blur just disappearing at the top of the screen, that's Charles Leong. Looks to be about, well, 5.5 seconds down on the leader. But he is also now pulled away 3.5 seconds on Dan Wells. So let's see when Wells in particular looks to go into the pit. That's him at the top of the screen in the other blue car, just in the very top left corner of your screen, disappearing there. This is Charles Leong, second overall, with Dan Wells following. Peter Lee is another 10 seconds further back, so field a little bit mixed up. We've got 32, this is Charles Leong running second overall, but first in the pro class. That, if things stay the same, will close the gap at the top of the pro championship to just 2 points. 15 would go to Leong and Kiyama, with 12 to Wells, narrowing the current 5-point gap to just 2, but it is far from over because Miki Kiyama is going to have a pretty big fight on her hands to hold on to that position in the second half of this race. Let you know how they are lapping. That's the 83 car of Dr. Ma, who is contesting the Lamborghini Cup division, and he is running pretty well in 13th overall, having started 18th, but he stayed out, I'm pretty sure, so he has overtaken some of the cars that have already pitted, so he might drop back a little bit further down. Dr. Ma running well here. A little bit of a slip and slide there as we see more cars come in and out of the pit. So 23 minutes on the clock. The pit window closes at 20 minutes. That's the number 2 car of Peter Lee. And we'll start to have a sense of how this is going to shake out. After these pit windows, we'll see the time. So now the race leader, Jasmine Jafahi, might have thought about doing one more lap, but it would have been a little bit too risky perhaps. So he has decided to come in, hand over to Salim Rafiq, and I think that Charles Leong has stayed out, so he's going to do one more lap. He's going to absolutely push it to the last possible opportunity. So this currently is the race leader, Charles Leong, who has been lapping very, very well. We're just getting reports, as if we didn't need more drama here in Shanghai, after a pretty exciting opening half an hour, reports that there might be a little bit of rain on the track. Can't see it just yet. And the cars still coming in and out. Busy pit lane right now, hive of activity. So Jasmine Jafar, after a brilliant first stint, has handed over to Salim Rafiq, and Rafiq goes, wow, squeezing through the gap there, as another car was coming just alongside him to pull into the pits, and he had to swerve between them. Looked a little bit dicey, but Rafiq pulls out. That is Jonathan Chicotto, who is currently down in 11th place, but he's not going to be staying there. In fact, he's already moved back up to 7th, as you'll see when the timing boards, as they do as I speak, just update. So this is the 32 of Charles Leong, and he will be coming in any moment now. There he goes. Thanks, Charles, for doing it right on cue. Miki Kiyama will be ready to jump in, just slowing down to make sure that he abides by the pit speed limit. So Charles Leong is currently in the lead, but he will be overtaken, or at least his teammate Miki Kiyama, you would expect to overtake her, by Salim Rafiq. And then the question is, what is the pace of the two drivers going to be? Well, we will have a sense pretty quickly. This is still the outlap for Rafiq, so not a chance to just yet see how fast he is lapping. Now, just to give you a little bit of an idea, he qualified for race number 1. He did the first qualifying session, which sets the grid for the first race of the weekend. He was down in 17th, so quite different to Jasmine Jafar, who's on the front row of the grid, and you can see the wipers and you can see from the conditions now, and this is really going to make things interesting here. And the question is, with this rain falling now, which of the teams were able to get wet tyres on versus the dry, which would make an absolutely massive difference. So Miki Kiyama goes back onto track, and it looks like as the rain is coming in, it's affecting some parts of the track more than others. Still looks to be dry over that side, but hard to exactly tell from my position here in the commentary box. But we did expect the rain. There's going to be an awful lot more of it later in the day as Typhoon Babinka gathers pace and gets closer and closer. So this, I imagine, is just the first warning signs that Babinka is on his or her way. Oh, and a spin already in this wet weather. Well, it's massively different over this side of the track, isn't it? And you can see the yellow flags and another spin. Well, with this kind of racing here, it's looking very, very messy indeed, isn't it? And this is potentially going to bring out more than a yellow flag. Let's see what happens here, because this part of the track, with still 17:45 on the clock, is looking just torrential. Whereas where the teams are, perhaps they weren't quite aware of how things were. And I believe, I'm not showing a replay, this is another spin. Well, this is very dangerous right now. Full course yellow, and these cars, you can imagine, still on the dry tyres, are, well, just not able to control whatsoever. So what is that going to do to this race? And there are limited options with the storm only predicted to get worse. Limited options for the race stewards to pause the clock and make sure everyone's on the wet tyres and get back out again. But it's going to be hard to have proper racing. So, well, I mean, it's just a mess there, isn't it, right now in this corner? That's the 77 of Stephen Hong, who's only been in the car a few minutes. That looks to be the 56 of Nicholas Pertilati, I think. There's the 5 on the left of screen, sliding all over. A little bit of contact between the two on the right with the number 7 car, Luo Hawen, who again has just joined the car. So now we have some changes of tyres as the safety car is out. So the 5 that we just saw a moment ago, and that is the O brothers in the HZO Fortis racing team by Absolute Racing. Harry now in the car after taking over from his brother Haziq. So the safety car will give some of these cars an opportunity to get the wet weather. Even the safety car looks to be struggling a bit. Wow, well, they'll be slowing right down. Well, that will be helpful to those cars at least who have come into the pit. And look at the conditions now. Visibility is way, way down. Feels like a night race at this point. If you're tuning in from in the world, it's just, well, that is local time, 11:53 in the morning, just before noon. And it looks, well, the heavens have opened. And just because of, I guess, this large 5.5 kilometre track, the rain was coming in on the far side. The teams, possibly some of them, not quite prepared in the still dry pit lane. At least that's the way it appeared. Maybe they were caught unprepared, and some of them put on the wet weather, looking at the radar more than others, and others clearly stayed out in the dry. Well, look at the sheeting rain coming down here, and it's beginning to pool on this track. Well, red flag now from the yellow flag, and it's no real surprise. So 14:35 on the clock, and we'll hold on to bring you information just as soon as we have it. But this is unfortunate, to say the least. The stewards made the smartest possible decision they could, moving things as early in the day as they could, so the start has moved up about 3 hours earlier. So the clock has been paused, but with the weather only predicted to get worse, it's hard to see how they're going to get back out to complete the 14:35 left on the clock. So the cars that have come in have put on their wet tyres, and they are now just lining up at the pit exit. Now, one option, of course, is to make sure that everyone has the wet tyres and then let them race for just under 15 minutes. In fact, it would be a little bit over 15 minutes, because what happens when the clock hits 0, then the race leader finishes his or her lap for the checkered flag, so it's sort of 50 minutes plus 1, if you will, depending on where the leader is at that time. But it's unclear how much racing we're going to be allowed to happen in these conditions. When you have a mixed field like this as well, you've got some very experienced pro drivers, but you also got some lesser experienced drivers in the Lamborghini Cup in the amateur class. They'll be asking for trouble to send them back out. You can see the speeds some of the cars are going around this track, so even with the wet weather tyres, they're lined up ready to go out. They don't get to race too often, and they want to make absolutely most of their championship time. And the stewards have a bit of a tricky decision to make here. So, for now at least, it looks like everyone is going to come back in. They have to, of course, with the red flag. And those that still have the dry tyres on will be getting ready. And we can just see the cars lining up. So, it is going to be interesting. When you can see and hear the rain, and people just running for cover. Those on the pit wall thinking, you know what, I'm just going to watch the last 14 or 15 minutes from the safety of the garage. Okay, well, this view doesn't look too bad, but other parts of the track are looking already beginning to pool water. Of course, the last thing you want is aquaplaning on the standing water. So let's just see some of these earlier action. Well, I mean, everyone was spinning. It was almost impossible to get through this corner. We saw, I think, 6 or 7, possibly more cars all come into trouble at this point on the track. Oof. Well, that's a big hit there from the number 5 car of Harry O, and then just trying to get past the 7 of Luo Hao Wen, and then the 78, that is Bobby Buncharan from Thailand. 4 cars coming in backwards in reverse there. Vincent Tai in the Arrows racing team, 2 drivers from Taiwan, partnering with longtime partner Johnson Huang and Vincent Tai there in the 51. And then the 71, I thought he was going to slam into the back. That's Super Chai. So I've lost count, in fact. I think it was more than 7 in the end, and perhaps there are others that we didn't see. But that corner in particular, that is where the worry is, I think. But we'll soon see. So that's the damage to Sutiluk's car. It's not too bad. That's not really going to affect race performance. You wouldn't think too much in these conditions anyway. He'll have much bigger issues to be thinking about. So, if you're just joining us and wondering what on earth is going on, you are watching live coverage of the Lamborghini Super Trofeo Asia Championship. Round 5 here in Shanghai, race 10 of the season. We have some very, very tight Championship races. We have the Pro class, the Pro-Am class, the Amateur class, and the Lamborghini Cup, all signified by the different colours for the race numbers on the left of the screen on the scoring panel. But right now we have a red flag due to some very heavy weather. You can see how dark it is, and that is because Typhoon Babinka, yes, Typhoon, is on its way into Shanghai, which is where we are. It wasn't predicted to make landfall until the early hours of tomorrow morning, but these big weather conditions, absolutely massive, if you see them on the map with the big spinning clouds. So clearly the front end of this weather system has already reached the city, and the stewards moved up all the racing late yesterday afternoon for today's programming to try to be done and dusted before the weather system moved in, and they thought they might have done it, but clearly they weren't able to, they didn't have enough time in the day to move it any further. So the first indication we got, I mentioned, was rain reported on track before we could see it, and there is actually the F4 Chinese Championship, which is scheduled to take place after this race. So the stewards will probably still be discussing what's going on. You can see that about half the field is lined up there at pit exit and opening their doors. I imagine it's getting pretty steamy in there, and the inside windscreens are probably misting up. You can see one driver in the middle of the pack there, sort of wafting his door to try and get some current in there. But the other cars are still remain with their doors open outside their garages. They'll have changed the tyres, but probably waiting to see what's going to happen before they line up in the pit lane, waiting to see if those red lights will go green at pit exit. Well, some movement here, and let's see if we can make out what's going to happen. Are they coming to tell the drivers that their day is done? Let's see what happens here. We'll soon see if the drivers start getting out of the cars, but they'll need to, at this point, they might just push them backwards into the garages. But it is a long pit garage. It doesn't look like it on this shot. You can see they were running for quite some time, not really getting any closer to the cars. Such is the angle here of this long pit wall and the long home straight of the Shanghai International Circuit. So the cars beginning to be moved, and that suggests, wait for confirmation, but that suggests as if we may be done here. So it's not the way we wanted to finish. And we're still putting some air in the car to try to circulate the air. It's a 65 car of Dan Wells, who is currently our championship leader in the pro class. And if we were to finish in the standings, his 5-point gap at the top of the table will be cut to just 2 points, with Charles Leong and Mickey Kiona then going to Jerez in Spain for races 11 and 12 in about a month's time. So the car's going back to the garage, and still no official decision being announced. Just showing red flag on all the screens that I have in front of me and on yours too. Now, interestingly, the rain does seem to have eased a little bit. And just on the front edges of these typhoon-like weather systems, as you can probably tell, I'm not an expert, they do have some bits that are heavier than others, so perhaps we just got the front end of a thick patch, and we're sort of in a little bit of a window until the next one comes, and it all begins to move further westwards. And it's been out off the coast of, right there from that view. It's clearly wet. It doesn't look to be pounding down. Okay, so the message we've just received is that the cars are allowed to have work done and change their tyres in pit lane. So this is good news because I think they're going to try and get these cars back on track. Now, the other interesting thing about this championship is that when you come in for the pit window, it's just there to change driver, or in the case of a solo driver, you just have to sit for the clock for 60 seconds. If you want to do any tyre changes, that has to be done outside the window. So they've clearly given the teams permission to change their tyres, and they're not on the clock as such, because we have paused with that red flag. But we're also getting a note that if any repairs need to be done related to safety, they need to request being able to do so. They don't have to wait for the clock to be running. And you would imagine that as long as it's something legit. We saw, well, more than half a dozen cars spin when they were out on track in the wet weather about 10-15 minutes ago at this point. And some of them sustained a little bit of damage. Peter Lee, I think, hit the barrier, and I think it was the 51, Vincent Tai, had some damage to his front right. So if the teams want to do any of those types of repairs while the clock has stopped, they need to get permission to do so. So unclear how quickly that will be approved. They don't want to be just sort of saying, yes, do whatever work you want, because that's largely against the rules in this particular championship. So the rain does look to have almost stopped, and I feared for a moment when they were pushing the cars back in that was going to be an early retirement, but no, that was just to make sure that everything is in order, make sure everyone has the right tyres on. Tyre change is allowed, and that's sort of a freebie, as it were, because normally they would need to be on the clock for that. Doesn't look like there's too much work being done on any of these cars. So the driver's just trying to stay relaxed. If there is rain right now, it's pretty light, but you imagine there's more on the way. And we know there is, it's just a question of timing, so we're going to get back out there. We're going to do it sooner rather than later. 95 in the background, the 610 Racing by Absolute Racing, and you can see down at the bottom Tottenham. 95 was Li Shenyu, who had very early retirement, having started in pole position. Well, we have had all sorts of drama here, and it's not finished yet. So apologies for the delay, but we are going to be back to about 15 minutes of live coverage just as soon as we get word. Car doors are open, and with the humidity and the rain, you would think that just keeping the drivers cool and keeping the windscreens clear on both sides, particularly on the inside, is going to be critical. The last thing they want is a foggy windscreen and have to come in because they can't see. Now, it's brightened up amazingly. It looks, let's tell from this view, it looks like the sun is almost coming out. So the safety car waits, and we'll see also they'll have to line up in order, so that's going to take a little bit of time. So while we continue to have a pause here, I'll just give you an overview of the different championships. So Dan Wells leads the pro class within the Lamborghini Super Trofeo Asia 2024 standings. He has 99 points with a 5-point lead from the pairing Charles Lim and Ricky Kiyama. As things are at the moment, they would narrow that lead to just 2 points if things stay the way they are. Wells should have a pretty interesting tussle if he can get in range of Miki Kiyama when we get restarted. That could be one to watch. Now, Gavin Huang and Jonathan Chicotto, and crucially it's Chicotto behind the wheel, they are going to be starting the restart from 4th position. And of course, with the safety car, any gap that's been built up has been erased. So Chicotto has a real chance of not just a podium finish, but an overall victory here. Salim Rafiq in the number 8 car is one of the amateur drivers, and the advantage that Jasmine Jafar gave the car is to put him in 2nd overall, but the gap that Jafar also built from Wells behind him will have vanished. So Chicotto currently 13 points off the lead with Gavin Huang, and if Chicotto is able to get up into the lead, and that's going to make it really very much a three-way race heading into the final 2 races of the season. So the race will be resumed under the safety car. The starting order will be announced by race control radio. So as a guide, that's what the order on the left of screen is going to be, but let's just see what race control announced to the teams, and we'll line up. So they could see some change here. So I'm going to have to be fairly nimble with the point calculations. Yesterday got a little bit confused if you were tuning into the coverage. Apologies for that with the pole position additional points. But suffice to say, it's very tight at the top of the pro class, and it's even tighter at the top of the pro-am class. Just 3 points separating the top 2 teams. Now, they are, interestingly, the way things are going to be even tighter, because Thomas Yuli has handed over to Nicholas Pertilati. They're on 106. And they are currently in 3rd position overall. Sorry, 3rd position in the Pro-Am class. Number 56 car in 10th overall. So they would get 10 points if things stay the way they are. And Andre Couto in the number 88 car, second overall in class, he would get 12 points, so that would cut into the lead, taking it from 3 points down to just 1 with 2 races to go. However, if they're both able to overall Salim Rafiq, I know this is a little bit confusing, but try to stay with me here. If Salim Rafiq is overhauled by the 2 pro drivers of Andre Couto and Bertolatti, and Couto is able to stay ahead of Bertolatti, then we're going to have a tie at the top of the Pro-Am class after 10 races. So that would put both the teams on 118 points. And Thomas Yu Lee and Nicholas Bertolatti currently lead from Jason Chen and Andre Couto. But I wouldn't be at all surprised if, well, wow, what a difference a few moments make. This was the corner that we saw all that slipping and sliding, and looks to be absolutely fine right now. Now, the track is clearly wet, but it's not raining. And I suppose with only 15 minutes left on the clock, no real decision to be made in terms of do we change back to the dries. Even if the rain does stay, the track can dry pretty quickly here. But anyway, so that is the Pro class and the Pro-Am class, with 5-point gap and a 3-point gap, which could be both getting even tighter. And then also some pretty good battles in the amateur class and the Lamborghini Cup. Brian Lee is running well at the top, looking for his 7th win in 10 races. But his race 3 DNF at the Bend in Australia meant that the extremely consistent pairing of Kat and Pooh, who only have 2 race wins, I should say, they're only 8 points behind. So any slip up from Brian Lee, a solo driver, and he is running pretty well in the 63 car. Any slip up from the Korean could open the door for the Thai duo to pounce and gain on him in the amateur class. And then the final competition to tell you about is the Lamborghini Cup, and that is currently being led by the O brothers from Malaysia, Harry and Haziq. They have 138 points, and they were second in the Lamborghini Cup in 2023, and they have a pretty good gap over Super Chai Wirabon Wompong, who is 27 points behind on 111 points. So in the amateur class and the Lamborghini Cup, the second place winners from last season, both poised to try and go one better this time around. But still lots to happen here in Shanghai. Another 15 minutes of racing before we really see how things shake out. And then 2 more races in Jerez in Spain, and that gets underway on the 15th, 16th of November. So, on we wait, and hopefully we can get back underway soon. It's possible, of course, that the officials are still reviewing requests to do repairs. We have to make sure that teams aren't trying to be a little bit sneaky and perhaps slip in some repairs that's not absolutely necessary for safety reasons. Because if you do have any repairs to your car, you aren't supposed to be on the clock here, and you come in and you do it in addition to your pit stop window. Now the pit window has closed, so they would need to come in to do those repairs ordinarily, which would pretty much kill your chances of a podium position, given the additional time it takes for a second pit stop. But given the fairly unique situation we've had today, perhaps they'll be a little bit more lenient. We might need to be processing a number of requests, and then those repairs will need to be done. And I want to make sure that if the conditions did result in some damage to the car that could put the car or the driver in jeopardy, that will need to be properly finished. So that, I imagine, is what we're waiting for right now. Last we heard is that the race will be resumed under the safety car, and the starting order will be announced by race control. So we don't have that starting order yet. We don't know how closely it is going to follow the previous standings that we had, and whether they have to go back a lap or two and see where things were. Now, interestingly, and this is just how the weather system works in these parts of the world, the umbrellas are out, but the umbrella are now for the sun, not for the rain. So, being all over the place in Shanghai today. Now, we do have some information on the restart order, and what we're going to have is, first is going to be the 32 car, which is Miki Kiyama, then the 65 car of Dan Wells, and then the 8 car of Salim Rafiq. So that is a change, with Rafiq moving down. So the cars are now lining up in this order. So we've got Miki Kiyama, who's just tucked in there behind the safety car. Dan Wells is going to be second. There he is, the blue car coming out. Then will be the yellow and white car of Salim Rafiq. Now these two lined up here are battling for the championship lead, and Rafiq here is in a different class. Then the fourth one there is Jonathan Chicotto, who is in the pro class. So cars 1, 2 and 4 are all battling in their own. So Chicotto just further up the pit lane, making his way down. In 5th position is going to be the number 2 car, and that's Peter Lee. So Peter Lee will be next to pull out in the black and green. And then behind him will be Brian Lee. So just going down the rest of the course now, redeeming one by one for you. The 88, 28, 77, 56, 75, 78 and 71, and then a few more. So this is Peter Lee, who is going to be starting in 5th position at the restart. Then we have the number 2 car, and that is, excuse me, I'm just getting mobbled up here, the number 63 car, that's Brian Lee. Then we have the 88, and that is Andre Couto. Andre Couto will be looking to make quick work of this field and see how he can move up. That's the 83 car of Dr. Ma. He's going to start last but one at the restart. So the 88 of Andre Couto is the last man to have currently lined up in the pits. The next is going to be the 28 car, and that is Smart Set. Although I don't see his car, so this one somewhere. But I've been informed it's the 32, the 65, the 8, the 11, the 2, the 63, the 88, the 28. So that there is, I believe, I'll try and sort this out for you in just a moment. after Andre Couto in the 88. It's going to be Smart Set in the 28. Then the 77 of Stephen Hong. He was one of the ones we saw having a bit of a spin in the wet weather. Then the 56, the Pro-Am team of Nicolas Pertolati, young Finnish driver. You can see some of the drivers just trying to stay cool and get some breeze circulating inside their cockpits. So after the 77 of Stephen Hong, it is the 56 of Nicolas Pertolati. Then the number 7 car, which is Hua Haowen from the Korean-based Vortex Racecraft team. Then after the 7 comes the number 5, and that is the HSO Fortis Racing team by Absolute Racing. Malaysian brothers of Hasik and now Harry O. And then comes the 78 car, which is Sutulak Buncharan in the True Visions Motorsports Thailand number 78 car in the amateur class. And then 6 more cars after that, 71, which is Superchai in the Siamgas Corsa. Then the number 9 car of Cat, who has taken over from Poo, the Thai duo. It's fortunate for people like me who are able to call them by their shortened nicknames instead of very long official titles that they have. They are in the number 9 YK Motorsports by Star Performance car. And then after the 9 comes the 98. 98 is Samson Chan in the Arrows Racing car. He competes in the Lamborghini Cup. And rounding out the field we have Vincent Tai in the Arrows Racing 51. And 2 other drivers, Dr. Ma in the number 83 Arrows Racing, also Lamborghini Cup driver. And then Kenneth Lau in the Cam Run Racing team. He goes in a 68 to round out this field. So the last 2 cars still in the pits. Wonder if they are not coming out, or we'll see shortly. So get a little bit more information as we get back to racing. So the clock has already started to tick, and hopefully the safety car will be going in after this hour lap. You can see the track is still quite wet, a lot of spray firing up there. So we're restarting the race under the safety car, or resuming I should say, with 14 minutes plus the final lap on the clock. And Miki Kiyama will get us back underway once the safety car goes in. And the question is, are they going to be happy enough with conditions? The safety car is going to go in straight away, or are they going to do 1 or more laps? Shanghai International Circuit, 5.5 kilometers in length, so conditions in different parts, as we saw with the different weather systems, even just on the track, was wildly different at the same time. Not quite like a Le Mans track where you can have almost 4 seasons at one time, but it was pretty interesting to see on the far side with just sheets of rain, and then people in the pits wondering what was going on because it was still okay there. Keeping a steady pace here. Last thing you want is someone sliding off on the safety car lap. But there isn't a whole lot of time to make a move for any of these races here. So at the top, leading 4 is going to be Miki Kiyama from Dan Wells, Salim Rafiq and Jonathan Chikotto. Then we have Peter Lee, Brian Lee, Andre Couto, and he'll be looking to move up. Smart Ser, and the number 77 car of Stephen Hong. And then rounding out the top 10, Finnish driver Thomas Pertilahti. So, safety car. And hopefully parading to the checker flag behind the safety car, but let's see how things are out on the track. I'm trying to report back to base about conditions. But the safety car is going to do at least one more lap. It did seem for a moment, about, well, 30-40 minutes ago at this point, and if you're still with us, thanks for your patience. We've had a pretty lengthy pause due to a very dramatic burst of rain, which is now largely stopped, but you can still see a lot of spray on this track. Kiyama getting quite a lot of spray from the safety car as well, so she's got the windscreen wiper there to lead this field. But if we aren't able to race without the safety car, the top 2 get even closer at the top of the championship, because Charles Leon and Miki Kiyama will just be 2 points behind Dan Wells at the top. So we've had a lot of drama so far today. The start of the race was pretty dramatic as well, with Li Xianyu, an amateur driver who had an absolutely scorching lap time in second qualifying yesterday, was the pole sitter, and despite pressure from the vastly experienced Jasmine Jafar off the line, managed to retain the lead the first few turns, but then a little mistake saw Dan Wells go through, and then a moment later Jafar passed him, and then Lee had a spin, and that was the end of his race. And his teammate yesterday, Xie Wenjun, had a retirement, so Lee wasn't even able to get in the car in Saturday for the first race of the weekend, even though he had been in and been very, very quick indeed for that qualifying session, which was held yesterday morning. Well, the safety car is going in, the lights are off, so this is good news. So we're going to have about 10 minutes or so of racing. Miki Kiyama there in the ready-orange car, a little bit of white in the 32, will get away here in the lead, but Dan Wells will want to be trying to overhaul her and put her firmly in the rearview mirror. There goes the safety car. So we are back to racing here in Shanghai. 9 minutes on the clock plus the final lap. Wells right behind the spray of Kiyama. Probably can't see a whole lot right now. He's trying to go around the outside, and Kiyama holds the line here. A little wiggle there. Still see wet on the track. Wells is trying to go very, very wide, but he's overcooked it slightly. And Miki Kiyama stays in front for now. Wells another go around the inside, but the door closing. But can he make it this time? Oh, it's neck and neck. This is very, very close. Fantastic defensive driving from the Japanese at the front here. And Miki Kiyama crucially has the thing, but there goes Wells through, and now the roles are going to be reversing. Can Kiyama come straight back? Oh, unbelievable. I think almost touching there. Kiyama comes back, and Wells is going to have the line on this turn, and will again go back into the lead. Well, this is neck and neck at the front, and it's going to be very, very hard now for Kiyama with the spray all over her windscreen, and she's getting pressure from the two behind as well. So let's see. Well, Salim Rafiq has moved down the field. So we've got Yels. There's Jonathan Chikotto in the number 11 car in third there, looking to go past Miki Kiyama. Well, the clock has had a bit of a jump and it's showing 2.5 minutes, so there isn't much time to go. So Jonathan Chikotto goes through into second place. Dan Wells looks to be away and clear. That's Peter Lee in third. Miki Kiyama in fourth there in the 32. And there, I think in seventh position is Salim Rafiq. So we expected he would drop. He's got to the top of the screen under more pressure for him. So Dan Wells is the race leader for now, with just about 2 minutes plus the final lap to go. Then Jonathan Chikotto has roared up, and where is Andre Couto? There he is in all of this. He is in fifth position. Was he perhaps going through one more as well? Andre Couto has already passed Salim Rafiq, so just as the gap at the top of the Pro Championship looks to be getting slightly wider, it's going to get slightly narrower in the Pro-Am. So Miki Kiyama for now holding off Andre Couto in the 88. Brian Lee going down on the inside, trying to pass Couto, but not today, at least not now. And this is a big battle here. Well, the spray has got easier, and it's going to be certainly easier for Kiyama there, and Couto is again having another look as we cut back to our leaders. We'll keep you up to date on how things are going. So Peter Lee in third in the green car. There is Kiyama, who is in fourth position overall, and then Andre Couto fifth overall in the 88. He looks to be good for a class win in the Pro-Am, but he'll see if he can get up into fourth position. Probably, with the time we have left, unrealistic to expect him to catch any of the ones for a podium spot at this stage. So Andre Couto in the 88, trying to find a way past a very stubborn Miki Kiyama. In the 32, Couto having another look, and still Kiyama holds it for now. Dan Wells is looking good at the front. Jonathan Chikotto will try to reel him in if he can. Chikotto needs to get back into this championship race with Gavin Huang. They're in third overall in the Pro Championship. He desperately needs a win, but time is all but out here. So there is the clock, ticks to 0, so we should get the last lap board, and then one more. So Dan Wells in the blue and black car at the front of your screen. He is your current race leader, and what a race it's been, with all the drama at the start of the race and then the middle and the restart. These last few minutes have not disappointed either. Jonathan Chikotto in the red car is in second, and then Peter Lee, the number 2 in the black and green, he rounds out the top 3. That would be a pretty good performance from the Chinese driver in third right now. So that is the checkered flag. That is your finish. Wells, Chikotto and Peter Lee. And in all the confusion about the time and the restart and the clock and the last laps, apologies there, but Dan Wells has grabbed a fairly unlikely victory at various points, as we have some battles as they dash down for the checkered flag in the other classes. And Thomas Pertolati crosses the line in 8th. He's in the 56th. This is the 98 car of Samson Chan. Well, that has been an unusual race to say the least, but there's certainly been lots of action. So, a ton of places moving around, and confirmation that Dan Wells is the race winner from Gavin Huang and Jonathan Chikotto. Peter Lee is third, Charles Leong and Miki Kiyama, with Leong doing so well in the early parts of the race. Martin Chen, Andre Couto take the class win in Pro-Am and finish 5th overall. Brian Lee gets his 7th win in 10 races in the amateur class. Stephen Hong is 2nd in the amateur class and finishes in 7th overall. Then 2nd in the Pro-Am, Nicholas Bertolatti and Thomas Yu Lee, 8th overall. Salim Rafiq and Jasmine Jafar down in 9th, but still a podium finish for those two in the Pro-Am. Jasmine Jafar with a stunning first half of the race, and Rafiq not quite able to hold on to his position. Rounding out the top 10 is Liu Hawen and Song Jiajun in the Vortex racecraft car. Then a couple of Thai entries. So if you are watching this, make sure that you tune back in about a month's time into the live stream for the conclusion of the Lamborghini Super Trofeo Asia 2024 Championships. Dan Wells is the favourite going into Jerez in Spain to clinch the Pro Trophy, but he will have to fend off the attentions of Charles Leong and Miki Kiyama, and also fast-charging Jonathan Chicotto and Gavin Huang, who are still in the mix. So there is Wells celebrating. Now we're going to have to leave you before the podium today. He wasn't able to make yesterday's podium due to other commitments, but I'm sure he'll be up on the top step in Shanghai in a few minutes. So the top 3 of Wells, Chicotto and Lee. And Wells driving solo for the first race weekend of this championship. He was previously competing with Frenchman Emilien Cardet, but Cardet has dropped in the standings because Wells has been solo here in Shanghai. Congratulations from competitors there, and hugs from the team. So let's take a look at the start, and on the left of screen, that's the amateur driver in the black car, Li Shenyu, who was a surprise pole sitter but did brilliantly into turn 1 to hold off Jasmine Jafar and Dan Wells, but unfortunately it wasn't to last. Wells there goes through past up into 2nd and then up into 1st almost immediately, so brilliant start from the Brit. And then just moments later, Li Shenyu had a spin out, and that was the end of his race. So plenty of action here. That's Peter Lee with Gavin Huang in the 11. 11 was brought over to the checkered flag from Jonathan Chicotto, of course. And then we had the pit window, as always. Slightly tight moment there. 65 of Dan Wells, who led at the start and crossed over in the line, but it wasn't quite as easy. And then we had this burst of rain with Typhoon Babinka just making its presence felt, and should be making landfall in the early hours, which is why we had an earlier start for the race to try to miss all this weather, but we still had to have a fairly lengthy pause for a red flag. And that's Dan Wells making the crucial pass of Miki Kiyama. Well, back and forth they were just in this part, but then Dan did get through into first place and was able to hold on. Miki, meanwhile, was passed by a couple of others, Peter Lee and Jonathan Chicotto. But Dan Wells took the checkered flag and now has still single-digit lead at the top of the championship. But tune in again in a month's time to see whether he and others can take the trophy in Jerez, Spain. Goodbye.